Hello guys, welcome back. This is RandoGEEK. Alright guys, so we have a follow-up to the discussion over what's been happening with AT&T and Verizon regarding the lead legacy. Alright, so looks like this could be very costly. We knew it would be expensive. We didn't know how expensive. So reports are saying that it could be upwards of $60 billion. So this is going to definitely put a lot of strain on AT&T financially. It's going to hurt Verizon as well, but being that AT&T is the one that's been around the longest and likely has the most cabling to clean up, this is going to be a chunky, sticky mess for them. So let's go ahead and jump into the article. Amid calls for accountability. One financial analyst firm estimates it will cost up to $60 billion to remove thousands of aging telecom cables covered in lead. According to the firm New Street Research, AT&T is squarely in the crosshairs. Okay, AT&T likely has the highest financial exposure overall, followed by Verizon and Lumen. The firm wrote in a recent note to investors. According to the New Street estimates, which stem from an extensive Wall Street Journal expose on the issue, there are roughly 48 million homes and offices connected to cabling that still contains potentially dangerous levels of lead. The firm estimates some of those locations will be cleaned up amid government spending to cross the digital divide. But for the remainder, the New Street analysts estimate a total cleanup cost of $59 billion. Regardless of who pays, this will be a major overhang for the ILECs and incumbent local exchange carriers like AT&T for some time. They warned some top congressional legislators are already moving forward with plans to address the issue. The telecommunications company responsible for the phone lines must act swiftly and responsibly to ensure the mitigation of any environmental and public health effects. Senator Edward Markey, DMAS, wrote this week in a letter to U.S. Telecom, a trade association for the telecom industry. He says, "This is corporate irresponsibility of the worst kind." In his letter, Markey asked the association and its members, which include AT&T, Verizon, and others, to identify how much cabling contains lead and where the lines are. And he asked, what plans do the company have to address the environmental and public health issues posed by these cables? So they're saying it's a century in the making. The WSJ has published a series of detailed, lengthy articles on aging telecommunications cables that may have had hazardous amounts of lead. According to the publication, telecom companies left behind more than 2,000 potentially dangerous lead-covered cables underwater, in soil, and overhead. Many more are likely to exist. The WSJ noted that the U.S. telecommunications companies mostly stopped using such cabling in the 1960s, amid mounting evidence that no amount of lead is safe, whether ingested or inhaled. However, according to the outlet's latest report, executives at companies like AT&T and Verizon have known for decades that lead-covered cables continue to pose a health risk at the lead leaks in surrounding soil and water. For example, the publication cited at a 2010 presentation by AT&T executive acknowledging the environmental impact of lead-covered cables in the operator's network. Soils retain between 83 and 98% of the released lead within 2 inches from the cables, claimed that presentation. Moreover, the publication indicates that AT&T and Verizon employees who dealt with such cables may show higher levels of lead in their bodies. So they're saying, preparing for the response. Both AT&T and Verizon have offered various statements in response to the WSJ's reports. For example, Verizon said it was taking these concerns regarding lead-sheltered cables very seriously. The company told the publication, Verizon added, there are many lead-sheltered cables in our network and elsewhere in the industry that are still used in providing critical voice and data services, including access to 911 and other alarms, to customers nationwide. But the issue is becoming more important enough that AT&T recently published a webpage on the topic. It also links to U.S. Telecom's own response to the WSJ's reporting. They said, we take the matters raised by the journal very seriously, and any public health concern is a top priority. It's important to note that the journal's reporting conflicts not only with what independent experts and long-standing science have stated about the safety of lead-clad telecom cables, but also their own testing, which we have made available to the public and shared with the journal. The scientific literature and reliable studies in the U.S. and abroad give no reason to believe that these cables pose a public health risk or a risk to workers when appropriate safety measures are in place. In its latest report, the WSJ notes that AT&T provided a single test report related to one lead cable location in Lake Tahoe, California, that it said found very low levels of lead in the water, and that the lake's water quality is not adversely impacted by lead cables. The WSJ said its report is based on hundreds of tests all over the country. So obviously now we're jumping into the blame game. It's unclear how the issue will be resolved, partly because the cables were laid at a time when they were considered safe and because it's not clear who owns the cables today. In some cases, indeed, the Environmental Protection Agency hasn't yet commented on the removal process for such cables, according to the WSJ. The New Street analyst said that if removing the cables becomes required, it's not clear who would foot the bill. The analysts cited three possible groups: the company's telecom customers or taxpayers. We think the government has a tough choice. If they force ILESCS to pay the bill, some will be forced into bankruptcy, delaying the remediation process in those markets potentially indefinitely. It will significantly slow the deployment of fiber infrastructure in the U.S. It will also leave less resources available to bring broadband in unserved and undeserved markets via the BEAD, Broad Equity Access and Deployment Program. They wrote, nodding to forthcoming government subsidies to U.S. telecom companies. We suspect that it's more likely the ratepayers or taxpayers are required to cover most of the remediation cost. So, nasty, you know. No other way to put it. To even suggest that the taxpayer should have to pay for this is just completely, it's just unjustifiable. There is literally no reason why hardworking people should have to pay for a dirty cover up by a stinky rich company such as AT&T or Verizon. In my opinion, they should be fined, and if they can't afford it, then they should be forced to file for bankruptcy. They can always try to come back under another name. Okay? The company should be shut down. Taxpayers, hardworking people that have nothing to do with this, should not have to pay for a greedy company's mistakes. Okay? This is the problem with many things, and this is why these businesses continue to act out of line. No one ever puts them in their place. Okay, AT&T was well aware of this, and they're suggesting that there's no harm at play. Obviously, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not qualified enough to understand how this works, because it's very dangerous. People can get sick, and now U.S. taxpayers might be responsible for paying this because, well, AT&T might go out of business, or Verizon might go out of business, and it'll slow down the deployment of fiber. Listen, we don't need fiber to live. Okay, we've had internet for many years, before fiber, and we were fine. Okay, what's not going to be fine is families that are broke, okay, that don't have jobs, can barely eat, have to pay extra tax out of their McDonald's salary, okay, where they might not even be working full time, probably part time, okay, so you're making maybe 15 or less an hour, okay, 20 hours a week, you're getting taxed already, okay, and now you're going to pay more taxes because greedy CEOs and companies don't want to foot the bill, didn't do what they were supposed to do. and now everyone else has to pay for their mistakes while their bank accounts are padded. You know, even if these companies go bankrupt, the CEOs are already rich. Okay, you can't hurt them at this point. Bonuses were taken care of. I'm sure $25 to $40 million bonuses were already deposited into their bank account. They're good. That's why they don't care what happens to the company. Okay, they're already rich. So I'm not going to go on too long about this. I don't want to make this a 45-minute video because I can go on for hours talking about the criminality in this situation here and how unjust and unfair it would be for taxpayers to have to pay for it. I think it's pretty obvious. The writing is in the article. I'm sure many of you are feeling the same way that I'm feeling. This is not right. Other solutions need to be brought. FCC needs to step in. Something has to go on. This is terrible. Okay, we can't have every time a company like this makes a ridiculous mistake and is just straight up it's irresponsibility, right? It's irresponsible. It's not a mistake. They were well aware of these cables being old, being laid out, and potentially being dangerous, right? And they didn't care. They got caught red-handed, okay? Caught, sneaky. They cut corners, okay? It's everything I said in my last video. Don't cut corners, you know? But I guess when you know you're going to get away with it, maybe that's why they do it. They know that they probably will not be liable for it. I don't know. I hope that's not the case. That's all I'm going to say. That honestly would be completely wrong to make hardworking taxpayers pay for their mistakes. So we'll leave it at that. Link will be down in the description for you guys. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.